My name is Bill Andrulitis, and this is my co-host here, Lincoln Davis, and we're in Waldoboro, Maine, at Lincoln's Upward Motor Museum. And today we're going to talk about, and we're going to call this series, What's Inside? And a little explanation around all that is that, you know, we go to outboard meets and we see all these outboards on display, but we never really get to see really what's inside and to, you know, expose some of the construction details that you'd see with an outboard all in pieces. And we have an opportunity here this time to start with this 1912 Evinrude, and there is a complete one here together, and then I have pieces of the equivalent, and we're going to talk about some of those features. Now, it's an early, you know, 1912 was fairly early for an outboard. Evinrude started supposedly in 1909. Probably a real production year was 1910, and then 11 and 12, this being a 12. And this pretty much has a lot of the early features that even you'd see out of 1910.
Bill, is it possible that that he might have worked at the Waterman factory, which was the first manufacturer?
Yeah, so that's what people say. And I know for a while there was some speculation that, you know, with Ole Evinrude's invention here, who claims to be the first, and he really wasn't, that did he know about Waterman? Did he know about the Waterman Porto? And I don't know if that's been resolved, other than you're saying that you read someplace that Ole may have even worked for that organization. So I don't know at this point. But the design differences are immense compared to the Waterman.
Let's just take a brief look at the Waterman Porto, just to look at it. So before we start digging into the engine itself, this is the Waterman Porto right here. And if you can see, it's a vertical cylinder, and very different gas tank mounted out on a handle, and it's, as you could see from this, it's very, very different from the design that Ole Evinrude had.
But good credit has to give to Waterman being really kind of the first one. I mean, it really is. And it was inspired by the single-cylinder motorcycle engine, and you can see that that's kind of that technology of the day.
It looks just like the motorcycle engines.
He had this motorcycle engine, and he said, well, now how do I make it push a boat? And then they designed this apparatus all around that vertical single-cylinder engine. The interesting thing is the fact that this is like, he swings the whole thing like a rudder. He was inspired by the operation of a simple rudder, and he decided that this outboard should have that feature. So, anyway.
All right, very good.
Maybe we'll go into details on that another time.
As you can see on this engine, the cylinder is horizontal. It's quite different. The whole gas tank is compact.
So we're going to talk about, let's say, Ole was inspirational about simplicity. So one of the things that, you know, this is simpler than the Waterman in that its usability is more friendly. So the way it clamps on the boat, it's got a pretty standard 2-screw transom bracket.
Very good.
That is simple. You just put it on a boat, whereas the Waterman needs a pivot support for the lower end that's attached to the boat. This is self-contained. It didn't need any of that. And the other feature is that the Waterman had a starting crank to start it, and this is built into the flywheel, so there's no extra crank needed. So it and both of these engines used battery ignition, and it was kind of a nice feature to have a battery box that you could carry with you that was, let's say, not exposed to the rain and elements, and so you could actually keep the battery box inside, and when you want to go boating, you bring the battery box to the boat. And
built in, and also have the Evinrude has an enclosed gear drive system too on the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, grease filled, which certainly had a better life than being
Right.
exposed
The
to
water.
gears and stuff getting stuck in it and twigs and
Yeah.
sticks and such.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, you know, it's, that Waterman Porto was a major achievement in boat propulsion. I mean, it's just a major, I mean, early, so anyway, back to Ole Evinrude, you know, did he know about that? And did he have this thought process where, oh, that worked really well, but I can make it better? Or was this just purely his thoughts on usability? And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I would say it's been well said that he went to work for, but could have been a myth started by Mercury Marine
Right.
too. So you got a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this example is a bit different. There's a later example here as well, and that one is like this one is mid-20s, and
Okay.
it, you know, it has some later features.
It's just the same to me.
Well, I know, but it has a magneto. It has that complex reversing system.
Did that work all that well?
I don't like it. I mean, I've used them and they work, but it's kind of a horrible thing. I think. Ole was ultimate in simplicity. I mean, he was just a great simplifier. You know, he was kind of like a Henry Ford kind of thing without any waste. So it's actually interesting that it parallels kind of these Evinrudes parallel the production run of the Model T Ford, and so it's kind of in that same era. But our goal today was maybe not so much to go into maybe everything what it looked like, but to go inside and so, you know, what does this thing look like inside? And very typically, it you know, the crankshaft is very typical of the day. There's nothing special about this crankshaft. It looked like a marine engine or anything else. Just a drop forging. Of course.
So they couldn't cast them. They had to be a drop forging.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the technology for castings wasn't quite good enough yet to do a cast crankshaft. But Henry Ford, I think, perfected it with the Model A Ford. They did. I think Model A Fords had cast.
Really?
Yeah, some type of.
So that would be a lot less expensive
A
to
lot
make?
less expensive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, nothing special about the crankshaft. Connecting rod, of course, is very typical, and I'll talk again a little about the crankshaft. The technology. It was known that a crankshaft had to be pretty low carbon steel and not hardened because of the crankshaft sees kind of a beating. And it needs to have a certain amount of like ductility to it, so it doesn't stress crack.
Would ductility be translated into flexibility?
Yeah, I mean it.
Because they whip. I mean, they got a great big heavy
Right. Yeah. It's
flywheel
not
up top,
counterweighted,
and
not
you've got that
counterbalanced,
explosion
right.
that's pushing it.
So part of having a soft crankshaft is, you know, it can be damaged easy from bearings. So early on, and so the connecting rod is bronze, but you see, what do you see in there?
Babbitt.
It's Babbitt. So you
Yeah.
can see the
Yeah? I'll be damned. I didn't know they had Babbitt in that
in that time period they used
Ford. I didn't realize
nice
it.
soft Babbitt
Yeah?
against a soft crankshaft. So the idea is it wouldn't damage the crankshaft
Yeah.
in any way. And there's truth to that. And automotive, I mean, in that same time period, you know, the Model T Ford was all of Babbitt, a very
Babbitt.
soft crankshaft with Babbitt bearings, and so that was really the technology of the day. And
What sort
it
of
worked
oil
well.
were they
Now-
talking about for these at this
To-
internally to work with the Babbitt?
what type of oil?
I mean,
I wasn't fussy.
But the oil would have to be integral with this system with a Babbitt. I would think it would wear very, very fast if it didn't
It needed
have
oil. It needed oil.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, you know, maybe they were, I forgot the exact instructions, but they were at probably, somewhere around a 16-to-1 or
Really?
20 to 1.
Okay,
or
fairly
something.
light.
Yeah,
Okay,
not
very good.
really heavy. It was a low-speed engine. It was these parts were way oversized for 1.5 horsepower. That's what this engine was.
Okay,
1.5
what was it?
horsepower.
What was its RPM?
Under 1,000, I think.
Well, it was 800 at that time period. It was
Yeah.
considered a high speed.
It was. They were right.
Yeah.
I know. So,
60 was considered slow.
So the other, moving along from the crankshaft and connecting rod is the piston. And one of the things that's interesting to note about this piston is it's got one piston ring.
That's huge.
And it's huge and all that, but it has, and that's one of the, even all the two-stroke performance people now always talk about one ring versus two rings. And there's a faction that claims they get more horsepower, there's less friction with one ring.
We're also talking about a metal here that is this fairly compatible with cast iron. It's cast iron versus forged iron.
A cast iron piston with a steel piston pin.
So its expansion rate was exactly the same as the Bora was traveling in.
Right,
Unlike
and the cylinder, is nothing too unusual about the cylinder. It's a cast iron with an integral cylinder head, no head gasket needed. And I don't know, the clearance it's probably a couple, 3 thou right there. But it's been honed, so it's got some time on it, so I don't know what the original clearance was. It could have been as little as 1 thou clearance.
I would think the seating would be very difficult with a ring that huge.
Right. So there was a whole process to do that.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure in this time period that they honed. I don't know when honing came to be. It might have been as early as this, but the cylinders are usually bored, sometime reamed, and sometime even ID ground. I think that some of
What's
the companies,
ID ground?
it was set up in a machine, and a grinding wheel would go in there and grind the cylinder. So whether it was ground or honed, I can't answer that right now. But what they did have to do was with a big wide ring like that, you have to get it to match the cylinder wall, and that required assembly with some type of lapping material.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what they would have used, but some type of.
Just as an explanation, Bill's comes from machine